Well, last time on our Vacation Bible School prop build, we got the basic structure of the Tiki hut done, as well as got a start on a shipping crate. Now let's give them both a little bit of character. In order to add to the realism of the shipping crate, I'm going to stencil some letters on it with some flat black paint. Notice the overspray lines as I take the stencil off. I don't like how this turned out, but I'll fix it here in a minute. On the stencils on the end, I decided to square my tape up, so at least the overspray would be square looking too. But again, I will fix this in a minute. I want the crate to look like it's partially sunk in the sand, so to accomplish this illusion, I'm going to cut some off of the bottom of it. I cut it at an angle so that when you set it on the ground, it looks like the bottom corner is embedded. Here I'm fixing that overspray issue. Using my random orbital sander, I'm sanding it off as well as scuffing up the letters a little bit. With the crate done, let's turn our attention back to the Tiki hut. We need some palm fronds for the roof. Here I've got a giant piece of cardboard and I'm just using a marker to lay out the dimensions. I'm cutting these in 24-inch wide strips, and then I've made a mark 6 inches down from the top. This will be the line where I start making my cuts. Making roughly 1-inch wide cuts down the whole length of each piece, I make what looks like palm fronds. I had to cover roughly 40 square feet of roof with these palm fronds. So needless to say, there was a lot of cutting done. My arm got really tired, and at one point, I even had to take a short nap. But afterwards, I felt refreshed, and I was able to push on through, and I got plenty of fronds for our roof. Then after you cut them all, you just come back and roughly tussle them. Makes them look pretty realistic. At least to a bunch of VBS kids. Suckers. Now let's start on the third and final prop we're making for VBS this year. The kids have stickers that they're supposed to put on a giant sailboat sail at certain times during the week. Well, you can't have a sail without a sailboat. So here I'm freehanding the shape of the stern of a boat. I've drawn it out on one half of the boat, and I'm going to cut it out with my jigsaw. Now, so that everything is symmetrical, I'm going to use those cut off scraps to trace it on the other half of the boat, and then cut those out as well. Now I have the transom of a boat. A little sanding will clean up the splinters on the edge. To add depth to my boat, I need 2 more of these, but I need them slightly smaller. So I trace the original, and then using a piece of wood as a gauge block, I draw a line parallel to the original tracing, about 3/4 of an inch in. Now when I cut this out, it'll be a slightly smaller version of the original. One of these smaller ones gets glued and screwed to the back of the original. Now I'm pre-drilling some holes for some 2x that'll run along the bottom to support our boat. Here's those 2x. We're going to screw those in with screws, and now you can see what it's doing. It's holding the ends up. Now with some glue and screws, we'll attach the other end as well. To deck the top of our boat, we're going to use a combination of plywood and some 1x. The plywood we ripped is going to go on the center portion. A little glue and a few finish nails will hold this on. Before we finish decking the boat though, we're going to build the hull. I just happen to have this piece of bendable plywood laying around. This was used as part of a packing crate on a piece of plywood I ordered. Normally bendable plywood is very expensive, so I'm not sure why they used this, but I saved it and it's coming in handy. I applied a little bit of glue and then I'm going to use some staples to hold the plywood on the hull. And after doing the same to the other side, we're ready to finish our decking. I'm using some scrap jam stock as my 1x decking. After cutting it to length, I just start gluing and nailing it on the top of the boat. You can see when we put the last piece on, our hull has nothing to nail to, so it bulges. But I have an idea. I've added a cleat to the bottom of the last piece. Now as we force this in here with some glue, this will give us something to staple our hull to in the center. And now it's time to fill all the screw holes, nail holes, and staple holes with some lightweight spackling. And while the spackle dries, we'll turn our attention to the sailboat's sail. I've got a 4x8 sheet of Luan plywood. I've marked a line 4 foot down one edge, the halfway point of the plywood. Now using a straight edge, I'm connecting it to the top corner. With my saw, I'll cut this triangle off. And when I take this cut off triangle and flip it around to the bottom, I have a right isosceles triangle. In order to give our sail some strength, I'm stapling 1x's along each edge. And I'll add some more in the center as well to give it a little more structural strength. The wall at church where I'm going to hang the sail has a metal channel about 8 feet up on the top of it. So I'm using some bracketry to form a hook on the back of the sail to hook over this lip. The brackets themselves, however, are not sufficient to hold the sail level. To do this, we need to add a 2x4 to them so that we can shift the center of gravity further over, and then the sail will hang level. And since I've already mounted my brackets, I've got to take my time when mounting the 2x4 on them so that the holes line up in the sail. Using a couple of clamps, I've held the bracket on the 2x4, and after I put a couple screws in it, I can remove the clamps, finish screwing it off, and we should be spaced just perfectly. Going back to the stern of the boat, we need to cut a hole in the top for a mast to stick out. After marking the hole with a scrap of carpet tube, I use a spade bit to get my blade on my jigsaw started, and then it's just a matter of cutting the circle out. Let's see if our mast fits. It's a good thing I have tall ceilings in the shop. After spackling all the staple holes in the sail, we'll give the whole sailboat a coat of white paint. All boats need a name on the back of their transom. We're going to call this one the SS VBS. If you'll notice, I didn't have enough S's to do it all at once, so I had to rob one and finish up. Even with all the masking, there's a slight underspray. I'll touch that up here in a minute. I don't like the stencilized look of the stencils, so I'm going to fill them in with a little black paint and a paintbrush. Sharp viewers may notice that the first S in SS was done upside down. This was an accident. I didn't realize it till after I had sprayed, and I didn't want to white it out and start over again. Well, here we see the finished sailboat, hung on the wall at church, all ready to be stickered up. And here we have the finished tiki hut. Turned out pretty good. It really looks like real bamboo and palm fronds on the top. And with the addition of the hammock and the lantern, the canvas drop cloths on the floor that look like beach sand, and all the other accessories, it really looks like a scene from a tropical island. We even have this awesome waterfall created by some of my very talented co-decorators. Well, I think the kids are really going to love this year's VBS. I know I really loved making these props. I can't wait till next year to see what props I get to make then. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video. And as always, thanks for watching. FRONDS.